Hello, my beautiful queens, and welcome back to Women Need to Do Better. I am your host for this podcast, Shelly Kirschenman. I'm a boundaries queen, a soft power mentor, and a woman who has personally been there and done that. And this is why I have the insight that I have. This podcast is meant for the women out there who are exhausted from doing all the things, holding it together for everyone and pretending everything is fine. You're the strong one, the capable one, the reliable one, the dependable one. And somewhere along the way, we got buried underneath this role that we've played for too long. And that's why we're here, because women do need to do better. We don't need to do more. We need to actually let go of the things that were never ours to carry. So, this episode 18 is called No One Asked You. And the reason I had it this title, and before you get defensive, is it's really about all these things that we have to do, our to do list. It's what's overwhelming us. And if you think about it, no one actually asked us to do all these things. We just took it on. We volunteered. We were filling in the gaps, anticipating people's needs. And now we're drowning in a life that's been built around doing all these things for everybody else except for ourselves. This one might sting a little, but it's also going to set you free. And it's something that I recognized because it came to me at this time when I was feeling resentment. I was feeling irritated about unspoken expectations, that emotional labor of just going, going, going. And I stepped back to kind of figure out how to I release what's not mine. How can I start getting more time to do the things that I want to do, get more energy, have more peace about it? Because that resentment for when you're doing it doesn't help anybody. And it was something my husband said to me one time that was the eye opener for me. I was, I don't remember exactly what I was doing for him, but I was doing something and it was on top of all these other things that I was trying to get done in that day. I was feeling especially stressed out and especially pressured and feeling like failure because to me, if I can't get everything that is on my highest priority, which of course was most of my list, completed, it felt like I was letting myself down and other people down. And when I was doing this one extra thing for him, and I was kind of snapping at him, and he goes, I never asked you to do that. And I felt insulted. I was mad. And I'm thinking, I'm doing this for you. How dare you not appreciate me? I'm doing this so that way your life is more convenient. And that's your attitude is I didn't ask you? So let me ask you something. How much of what's overwhelming you right now is something that's on your to-do list that no one actually asked you to do? I mean, that is a mental load that we carry. Anticipating other people's needs, picking up what other people dropped, saying yes when maybe you were like at a maybe or even a no. That automatic filling in the gap every time that we see something that needs to be done, even though we're barely holding it together ourselves. And so here's that thing that reminded me of that conversation I had with him. He's right. I did volunteer for most of it. So this is what we're going to get into. And we're going to talk about why did we volunteer and how to stop doing that so that way we can get more time. Because let's face it, high achieving, busy women like us, that's a commodity. That is gold, time. So the real problem is that we think that we're overwhelmed. We think that people expect too much from us. And that thought manifests in the form of fear of rejection. And I'm telling you, it's not the big moments, right? That, oh my gosh, it's that huge thing and I dropped the ball. I mean, those count too. But if you really reflect, step back And don't judge yourself about it. Just try to stay neutral and just reflect on that. It's those invisible autopilot decision makers in our heads, behind the scenes, the thousands of small choices that we make every single day. You ever notice how sometimes in those wee waking hours or of the morning or when you're about to go to bed, the best ideas will pop up in your head. But then all that other stuff of what you need to do and you don't want to forget and it clouds everything else. It takes over in your head. And so those ideas, they never make it out into the world. Or maybe it pops into your head when you're in a social setting, but then you just don't take that opportunity to share it because you're second guessing yourself and well, whatever works for everybody else, right? Even though you have a strong preference for something different. Let me tell you, that's not you being flexible or easygoing. That's really that fear inside of being rejected, being discounted, disregarded. So you end up letting people make decisions for you without your permission. And it could be something like you're in a meeting, right? At work. You've got the solution, but you don't want to pitch it because you already decided for them. They probably wouldn't be interested. So they never even get to hear it to make a decision for themselves. Or, somebody else probably already thought of that. Or maybe it's in relationship. You don't want to have that conversation because it might make things awkward or it might start a fight. And emotionally, you're just so spent that you just don't have the time or the energy to fight them on it. Or maybe at church or something that you volunteer for. You don't want to be the one setting the standard because they might think that she thinks she's in charge or she's too demanding. So you just quietly step up to the plate to over deliver without the recognition. Kind of like that story. I don't know if you have read that story as a child about a shoe store, and he had like these little gnomes or something that would come in the middle of the night and they would make all the shoes, do all the work. It's like you're that person that does the behind the scenes work, all the efforts that no one really recognizes until you stop doing it. Probably what you do at home, right? You anticipate everybody's needs before they even know they have them because God forbid someone else should be disappointed or inconvenienced. But when you're sick and you're down and out and you stop doing those things, boy, everybody notices, don't they? Well, there is a strategy behind your overwhelm, and you need to understand this in order to make that change. It's not a feeling, it is a strategy that you have developed to stay safe, to stay liked, to stay included, to feel valued. It's something that you've put on yourself, that you've attached your worth to all these deeds. That's the same strategy that you've learned from childhood to become safe, doing what they tell you to do, getting along with everybody, sharing when you really don't want to because otherwise you're perceived as selfish. And that in turn shows up in your adult life. And it stops you from actually living the version of you that you want to, so that you can be that version of you that you think everybody else is going to like, is going to accept. And you're exhausting yourself by trying to avoid that kind of rejection. And you're rejecting yourself in that same breath. You saying no to your own needs, you not speaking up for yourself, you not choosing the preferences that you have, you not setting boundaries and making decisions for everybody else before they get the chance to say yes or no, so that way you don't get rejected. Doing all these things that no one asked you to do. That is why you're so exhausted. That is why you have no time. And I know it comes from that little voice that whispers in your head because I've had it too. I still get it sometimes. You know, that one where you you wake up and you're feeling empowered, right? And you go into work and you're just in your zone. And you go to that meeting and you know the problems that your department's been having, and you're like, oh man, I've been thinking about this all weekend, and I know exactly what's gonna help our team. What can make this better? And then a little head, when you're about to say something, says, who do you think you are? You're gonna speak up in that meeting, and boom, that voice of quiet. Who are you to talk? Just you lay low, stay under the radar, and you still are having that belief that I need to work so much harder, but I don't deserve the recognition because it's just what I do. It's just who I am. It's what I'm supposed to. When someone compliments your work, you downplay it. There's a promotion or a job coming up and you're thinking, or a new opportunity. Yeah, I should go for that. And then you start talking yourself out of it because, oh, well, so and so is more qualified, or oh, so and so had their eyes set on that. Their financial situation, they need the money more than I do. Whatever excuse you have, or you're about to set a boundary that you've never set before, and it's uncomfortable, it's new. And the thing is, that feeling is your own self sabotage, where you're talking yourself out of things and you're telling yourself that you don't belong. It's that fear of rejection, because as human beings, we are wired for networking, for community, for connections with other people. And so, because that is so ingrained in us from the time that we were young, to do whatever it takes to get along, don't cause the waves, don't be that difficult child. Our brain has learned to keep us quiet and safe under the radar. And so when we start trying to speak up with authority, it feels uncomfortable. And then we start apologizing for our opinions, or we downplay it like, oh, well, this might not work, but, and then you say what it is. Why are you discrediting yourself before you even give other people a chance or opportunity to make a decision on what they think? Or you feel like if you are too loud or too proud or you're taking up space, it's going to make other people less than. If someone comes to you and it's like, oh, wow, this is so great what you've done, or they ask your opinion on something, you play small there too. You know what you know. And in the silence of your own head, you're like, yeah, I know that. But somehow when someone asks you about that, you're like, oh, well, I mean, it could be this. Your brain is sounding that alarm. Wait, people might think that you're arrogant. We don't want to be that bitch. We don't want to sound like we're so full of ourselves. They might not like that version of us. And we fear that rejection. So how do we break free from that rejection? How are we able to actually step into our confident self that we have in our head when we shut up that other voice that tries to talk us out and keep us quote unquote safe? When we're trying to go against the grain of what we were raised about getting along and not causing ripples, not rocking the boat and all that stuff. It's that uncomfortable awakening that we have to start with acknowledging first, right? Just over the next couple of days, pay attention to how many times that you do that performance to avoid rejection, where you don't say what you really want to say. That awareness can feel really awful because you can't unsee it, but you need to if you want that change. And once you've done that for a few days, you start recognizing, okay, how often am I downplaying my value? How often am I tying my worth based on the assumption of what other people are thinking about me. And a lot of that is our assumptions. We're projecting onto other people what we think they think about us. Because do we actually ask them, hey, what do you think about me? What do you think about me when I say, and you fill in the blank? Because most of us don't talk like that. So once you start being aware of how often you do it and what ways you kind of don't show up like you really should, that kind of that imposter feeling, right? So that way we don't get rejected. Then we get to that messy middle, when we start kind of changing that voice in our head that says, they're probably not going to like what we're doing now because they're so used to me being agreeable, or they're so used to me just taking on all the extra chores without anybody asking me. They're just so used to me stepping up to volunteer. You ever been in those meetings when they said, hey, we need somebody that's going to handle XYZ, and everybody's, oh, well, so and so will do it, and they volunteer you, or they voluntold you that you're going to do it. So when you understand that you need to shift out of that, it's that messy middle because we are trying to grow. Been there, done that. And sometimes you're going to fail and it's okay. I want to give you permission to understand that it is not a straight line. It's not, okay, one day I wake up and boom, I decide that I'm just going to set these boundaries and they're just going to be full solid. No, I'm never going to do what I used to do before. I'm changing. You're going to get uncomfortable and sometimes you're going to ace it and sometimes you're going to fall back into those old patterns. And that's where a lot of people will quit because they're like, see, I tried and I end up, it's useless. And it's not useless. It's a practice because think of how many years you've been behaving this way. It's not going to change overnight. I talk all the time about consistency and starting small. I would rather take small baby steps towards that goal that I want than no steps at all. And then once you start doing it more and more and more, that's when it starts to feel comfortable, more natural. I mean, think about it. When you first learned how to ride a bike, how uncomfortable, how scary was it when you're wobbling on that bike and you feel like, oh, I don't want to go faster because I'm gonna fall. I've gotten so many strawberries on my knees all scraped up. I've got scars still as my adulthood to prove it. But I know how to ride a bike now. And it took time. It took a lot of falling. And that's the thing. Just don't give up. That new way of you is going to start to feel more natural, start to feel more comfortable, like riding that bike. And now you can go speeding down, doing the turns, maybe even doing a few jumps or something. I don't know. Have fun. But when you start doing it, you're going to start feeling that joy, you feel that excitement, you feel that energy inside you. And your people will love you for it. You're going to bring out those people that are going to support you, that are going to love you, that are going to embrace the new you and love it because you're being genuine. You're being authentic. You're being you. And the people that don't like you for who you are, thank them and say, hey, save me time, save me guilt. And they'll just excuse themselves out of your life. What a blessing. What a blessing. Because here's the thing, what that rejection actually means isn't what you think it means. We have been trained by society, the way that we were raised, the many years that we have this belief system to think that that rejection is a personal attack on us. I'm not good enough. Something's wrong with me. I failed. Those are things that we tell ourselves to reinforce the reason of why we need to pretend to be something else or just fly under that radar or to try to fit in. But really, what that rejection means has nothing to do with you. That rejection has everything to do with it's just not a right fit. Or maybe that person just has different needs than you, or the timing is wrong. It does not mean anything about your value or your worth. That's it. Nothing to do with you. But somewhere along the line, we've attached a belief that rejection has something to do with our worth instead of about the fit for the situation. And that lie has been what's running in the background. I chalk it up to 4 levels to process that rejection. And at the very bottom level, level 1, and it's where a lot of us get stuck. We take it personal, right? They don't like me. I'm not good enough. I did something wrong. And we spiral with all these doubts and self talk. And we have shame and we start avoiding similar situations. We start shrinking and all that kind of stuff. And what happens? It changes how we feel about ourselves. We tie it to our worth, and that is so much far from what's actually the truth. But the next level up, right? We're growing, we're changing, we're leaders. We we say, okay, it was the timing, it wasn't right. They've got different priorities, and that way we detach a little bit. We're still disappointed, but there's not as much of that damage to our self-worth. But we can grow even more from there. When we get that no, or somebody rejects our idea, or whatever it is, something that just feels like it's an attack on us, turn it around and use it as information. Look at it from a neutral perspective. I can use that information to learn and refine. It tells me something about the actual fit, the situation, not me, not personal, right? Not circumstantial, not about the timing. It's about the fit. And we can refine our ideas, strategic thinking. It encourages that. And the highest level is where we totally detach, stay completely neutral, no judgment. And we look at the situation and we say, okay, maybe this is closing that door and redirecting me to something that is better aligned for me. Because we stop thinking about me, right? We don't think about us and our needs and what we need, what we want. So this clears space for the right opportunities for us. We learn to trust ourselves, get that momentum, get excited about what's coming because each of those levels, the higher up we are, it shifts away from that rejection of a situation to move us more towards perspective, which will give us power and peace. So here's a question that you can ask yourself will help you start those changes and start that shift. You can ask yourself, am I willing to risk their disapproval? It's about changing where you focus and changing the beliefs that you have. And really, right now, what your belief is, I need to gain their approval, right? I need to be wanted. I need to be liked. You don't want to go against the grain, which is the reason you've been making the decisions you've been making. So it's about whether you're willing to be disliked so that way you can be loved for who you really are, or continuing to try to figure out what it is they want from you, which really isn't feeling genuine. It really feels like you're trying to be somebody else. And that's where I started, is just taking a step back so that I can recognize it's that piece that starts it all. When you can ask yourself the questions and look at what's going on without judgment and without telling yourself some kind of story, just get neutral to the situation. And I keep playing that back in my head when my husband had made that comment. I never asked you to do it. And he's right. And I started looking at all the other things on my plate when I started feeling stressed out, when I started feeling overwhelmed. Nobody asked me for so many of those things. It was just that natural instinct that I want people to like me or I want them to need me. It's that seeking approval. And once you can disconnect from your actions becoming the reason you are valuable, or that is the reason why people like you, and start understanding people like you for you. And the ones that don't, they don't need to be in your space. You don't need to waste your energy. And that was kind of my wake up call to remember that the weight of all those things I'm carrying is the stuff I volunteered. And I am nobody's doormat. And nobody knows me better than myself. And once I started digging into the reasons why I kept saying yes, the reasons I kept adding to my to do list, it really was that I was trying to convince everybody around me of my worth, of my value. I didn't want to be rejected. So I kept anticipating everybody else's needs because that was how I was wired. It's what my brain knew. It's how my brain kept me safe. It's so I didn't disappoint people. So here's where you need to give yourself some permission to let go of things, to be able to step into who you really are and who you need to be for yourself. That analogy that you've heard so many times about when you're in the airplane, if that air mask comes down, you got to take care of yourself first because if you don't take care of you, you can't take care of anybody else. You can't pour from an empty cup. You don't have to be the glue that holds everything together. You don't have to be responsible for everybody else's reactions. And you definitely don't need to be the one who keeps filling in the gaps and making everybody else comfortable or making everything else so much easier for their lives that you're putting yourself last. So this week, will you try? And instead of automatically saying yes to that next request or that next thing that you are just going to add to your to do list, ask yourself, did someone ask me to do this? Or am I just volunteering myself again? You might notice how often you actually are solving problems that no one asked you to solve or making things easier that nobody asked you to do. And yes, you're going to find that it's going to be uncomfortable because you're going to stop doing those little things, those invisible little things that you do that makes everything run smoothly because you're the behind the scenes person. But when do you come first? When do you get to be that easier life? When do you get to have the convenience and get some time to yourself? So, if this is something that you are struggling with or that hits, hits that aha for you, please join me. I have a free Facebook group called High Performing Leaders Confidence Lounge. It's on Facebook. I have a link in my bio, and there are a bunch of women just like you who get it. And we support each other, we cheer each other on. We are non-judging space that's just safe to be your authentic self. And when you start learning how to come out of that hiding spot where you just are only you in certain areas and you have a space that you can start practicing and bouncing these ideas off of other people, it gets easier to do it in other spaces as well. And I know this work isn't easy because it requires you to question everything that you've been taught, what it means to be likable, what it means to be accepted. And yeah, you're going to risk some people being uncomfortable with you. You're going to risk having some of those uncomfortable conversations. And it's going to require something of you. It's going to require you to put yourself first. And consistency doesn't lie. You got to do the work, and it starts off like that riding a bike, uncomfortable at first, but you get better at it because you can't build a meaningful life based on fear. You can't have authentic relationships if you're hiding behind excuses that you're trying to keep the peace and you don't get that for yourself. You can't have that life that feels ease when you don't prioritize yourself. And it's not selfish. You're not going to reach your full potential when you're holding yourself back. So, I am Shelly Kirschenman. This has been Women Need to Do Better. And let me ask you a favor if I could. If you liked this podcast, please give me a like and subscribe. And if you know someone that would benefit from this, would you share it with them? Until my next episode, I hope that you listen to your inner voice, stand strong with your boundaries, continue to reach deep inside to grow, even when it's uncomfortable, but most importantly, stay true to yourself and protect your peace. Love and aloha.